So one of the wonderful aspects of what I get to do is work with a lot of leaders. And a lot of leaders reach out, especially in a time where there is a lot of disruption, and say, hey, what do you see coming in the future, and what should we be doing? And I really take it as a great honor that people reach out. In a lot of cases, I try to be proactive, so I don't wait for people to get in touch with me. I reach out to them. And I try to have a discussion about, all right, well, what can we do next? So we are experiencing this great reset in 2020. I'm sure people will end up calling this year the year of COVID-19. They'll have a name for it. I tend to like to think of it more as just a great reset, right? A chance to reset a lot of the things that we're doing. But I have loved in the last few months reaching out to leaders and trying to be a bit proactive about, hey, having worked with lots of leaders, this is what I'm seeing. This is what works well. And so I think it's important to really ask ourselves, all right, what do we do now? What do we do going forward as we're working our way out of a pandemic? Or as we're dealing with, yet again, race relations and bias that keeps coming up because we still have not solved it once and for all. Right? What do we do next? Well, I think it's important for leaders to first of all understand, and we've had a great reminder this year, that unexpected things happen. And unexpected things happen sometimes for a reason, sometimes without a reason. But as leaders, we never can sit there and say, hey, I know what tomorrow is going to be. Right? There is often going to be events, and we have a name for some big events that happen that are unexpected. We call them black swan events. It's an event that nobody really wrote a book about, nobody really made a great prediction on. Now, interestingly, we should have known that a pandemic would come along. I mean, they've been coming along for hundreds of years. I think what we didn't know this time was what our response to the pandemic was going to be. So this was a black swan event. So I do get questions. Sometimes leaders say, well, Scott, you couldn't have predicted this. We didn't know it was going to happen. So there was really no way to be prepared for it, was there? And I will disagree and say, there has been events for my entire life. There will continue to be events long after you and I are both gone. Disruption and events happen for a reason. And so I think one thing we have to really think about from an action item standpoint is we have to always be prepared. So as a leader, we've got to be prepared. And that is more than we need a closet full of masks or a closet full of hand sanitizer. It's like, no, we always have to be mentally prepared for the next event that's going to come up and how we're going to respond as leaders. Teams watch us closely. It's one thing I have a great sense of. I know in our organization, it was interesting how closely the people who work with us watched how we responded as leaders. They watched our mood. They watched how positive we were. They watched if we had any fear or anxiety. They watched the moves that we made. They watched how we showed up in the world. I mean, the model that we were is probably one of the most important things about leadership. It's the same for you. What did people see in you? I talked to somebody who used to work for us, and she moved up to a really good job, and we've always stayed really good friends. And she said, hey, the CEO at our organization, the moment that the pandemic hit, went to work from home, and we haven't seen him since. And that wouldn't be so bad, but he told the rest of us that we weren't allowed to work from home. So he made everybody else come work from work for the most part, but he's been home now for 3 months. Is that the kind of leader you want to be? Is that the kind of example you want to show? Because believe me, everybody who is on your team, everybody that you're responsible for, they're watching how you act. So it's so important to stay calm, right, and work through a time like this. Leadership is on display during a crisis. Leadership is on display when there is unrest. What kind of leader do you want to be when people look at you? I have a feeling that maybe one of the best things that can be done by a leader is to understand that there's probably different mentalities. In other words, there is a crisis mentality that a leader has to have when there is a time of crisis. And that is different than the type of mentality you have when there's just steady state. I think when there's steady state, you can fade a little bit to the background and you can uplift the people around you. I think that's a steady state mentality of a leader. But I think in a crisis, then a leader has to be more visible. And I think we have to be much more conscious of what people are seeing and what kind of examples we're showing. I think we have to be conscious of things like the pandemic has been unfair and uneven. And so there are people that literally have died. There's people that it's been a tragedy as they lost their jobs. But then there are people on the other side that are doing better than ever. Their businesses are flourishing. If you're in e-commerce right now, this is one of the best 3 months you've ever had. Amazon's earnings higher than they've ever been. Right? It's uneven and unfair as far as how it's hit. Now, how do you handle that as a leader? If you were a leader that your business was shut down and you had no choice and you may not be able to reopen it, did you handle that with grace? Are you handling that with grace? If you're a leader on the other side of the equation, your business is doing better than it ever was. Are you using some of this newfound prosperity to reach to other people? Is that what you're doing with that prosperity? I don't care which end of the spectrum you're on. Right? It has been unfair and uneven. And as a leader, we have a responsibility to figure out, all right, which direction should we be going? This is a great chance to reset things as a leader. So if there was ever a time when we could change things, now's the time. People are going to be more willing to accept change because their normal has been shattered. But what will those changes be? And as leaders, I think we need to think about that. It could be a complete reorganization about how we handle our work day or our work world or work from home. But it could be a whole different way that we do products and get our products into the market. You know, it's a wonderful thing about a reset is it gives leaders a chance to be able to change something that before maybe you were nervous about changing. I think it's important for leaders to always look for a silver lining, to always have a God-sized view of a disaster or of a crisis. What will be the positive that comes out of this? If a leader is not willing to look for a silver lining, then who is? It's one of the most critical things that we have to do is keep things in context. Right? To be able to look at an event, whether it's happening to us personally, whether it's happening to a business or an organization, whether it's happening to a state, to a country, to the world, and to be able to look at the silver lining and say, oh, I know this looks terrible now, but what will we learn from this? What will we now improve so that this never happens again? There's always a silver lining, always a silver lining. And leaders, we need to look for that silver lining and help people be able to see it. Like at the end of the day, and you can look at yourself in the mirror and you can see, during a crisis, leaders always shrink or grow. Put under pressure, leaders shrink or grow. And for the first half of 2020, this has been a mirror that you could hold up to yourself as a leader and say, did I shrink or did I grow? If you grew, that's fantastic. Don't stop. If you shrunk, and you can say that to yourself. You don't have to call me and tell me about it. Right? But if you could look in the mirror and say, I shied away. I shrunk during this. I didn't know what to do. I panicked. I had anxiety. I woke up every morning scared to death. Right? If that was you, it just means you have a chance to improve. You have a chance to say, okay, how can I respond differently next time? Because every time a crisis hits, and they will hit over and over again all of our lives, you have a chance to shrink or to grow. And that's a decision that we have to make. And I thank God for that. Hopefully everyone understands that God does not give us crisis. God does not give us pain as a way to punish us for anything. God allows crisis in some cases to happen, or we cause it, and it is a chance to grow. It's a chance to learn lessons that we haven't learned so far. And as leaders, we have to go first. We have to go first in this. Let me give you a real practical example. The work from home model. Let's unpack that for just a second. So this crisis, this pandemic that we chose to respond to differently than we ever have before. So around the world, we sheltered at home. Now, that shelter at home, that sounds nice, but what that means is we basically took billions of people out of the economy, like billions of people out of their regular day-to-day, and we had them just stay home. And it is devastating to a lot of organizations, a lot of businesses, right? It's devastating, and still is to a lot of organizations. Let's look for the silver lining. One of the things that a lot of people learned was that their team members could work from home, and that they could trust them to get just as much work done at home without having to commute. And when they didn't have to commute anymore, let's look at some of the positives. Some people got to spend a lot more time with their family, a lot more time with their kids. They didn't have to spend an hour or half an hour each way commuting. When they didn't have to commute, it was less wasted time. It had a much better environmental impact. I mean, we've all seen the pictures of cities that were formerly smog-filled, that now the air is clear. Right? Or the canals in Venice where there's now fish. Going up canals, I haven't seen fish in years. Why? Right? Because we had people emergency work from home. Right? We can't turn now a blind eye to all the benefits of work from home. Now, technology has allowed us to do things like that for at least the last 5 years. But it's just now that we've begun to trust it. So what will happen with work from home? Now, because I get paid to look into the future, let me give you a little heads up on what will happen because of this pandemic. I believe organizations will choose one of 5 models. They'll all go back to one of 5 models, right? One model will be full work from home. I have a smaller business. Everybody can work from home. We just don't need an office anymore. Partial work from home. That means the people who have to be at the office can be at the office, but those who cannot be at the office, right, or don't need to be at the office, they can work from home. So partial work from home. Then we will have basically optional work from home. We'll just tell people, if you want to work from home, you can. If you want to work from the office, you can. Or you can go back and forth. They're just going to make it optional from now on. The fourth one will be what I would call HR awarded. So we'll tell people you get 30 work from home days, and you can use those 30 days anytime you want. And then the last of the 5 model will be scheduled work from home. You work from home on Mondays and Wednesdays, but Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Fridays, you come to the office so we're all together. Right, those are 5 different work from home models. And I would guess, from the research we've seen already, maybe 60 to 75% of all organizations will go to one of those models, which is going to be a massive shift of allowing people to work from home, which is going to massively change work-life balance. It's going to help the environment. Right? There's going to be a lot of things that are positive from this. That's what I mean when I look at the silver linings. I mean, who would have thought that we would have a pandemic like this that would force an emergency work from home situation, and then we would like it? And many people would say, hey, if I don't want to do it full-time, at least I want to be able to do it at my choice, or do it much more often than I'm doing now. And who would have thought that leaders in organizations would say, you know what, this works. We should do more of this. This helps people be happier. Right? It helps people spend more time with their families. Right? Let's do this. Right? And this is just an example. When we look forward on what should we do, we should learn the lessons that we can learn from this. You know, one of my observations about leaders during times of crisis is that it becomes difficult for them to balance the strategic and the tactical. Because in a time of crisis, people start sliding over to become very tactical. What do I got to do today? Right? What are the things I have to execute on right now? And I think one of the things that we should learn from this, and that we all need to be aware of, is that there are dangers if you get way too tactical. You lose sight of the bigger picture. And so we have to be careful of sliding all the way over into the tactical and losing perspective on the bigger picture, right? On the strategic of what we need to be doing. And I mean that for us in our personal lives. I mean that for leaders in organizations. You know, just as a human being, when I didn't get to fly around for the last 3 months, which I'm used to flying around every week, and now I had a lot more time at home, one of the things I did was I had to make the adjustment to, okay, I'm going to be sleeping in my own bed and home every day at 5:30. What am I going to do with this time? And there was a tactical side of that. I have time, how should I use that time? Right? But then there was a strategic side of that. Like, God is blessing me with a chance to have some free hours. How do I want to invest those hours? Right? And I had to balance the tactical with the strategic, right? Just in my personal life, about how do I take advantage of this thing that has been given to me? It'll probably only last for a while, but during this time, how do I take advantage of that? At a huge macro level, if you run a large organization, it's no different. During the time of crisis, you really have to be able to think at the micro level and the macro level and find a good balance between those. Because at the end of the day, balance is the key word. Right? It's just being able to find balance even when there's a lot of chaos going on around you, because that is what a leader's got to do. We have to be able to stay balanced, and we have to be able to find the balance even in a chaotic world. And I thank God for 2020, for me to get to practice again, being able to stay balanced and calm during a time like this, so that I could be the kind of leader that people need to see. And I hope the same thing for you. Please know this, one of the advantages, I think, to getting older, which I am, is as you get older, you've seen things many times. When they say you get older and you get wiser, it's much more just that you get older and you've seen things over and over again. It's hard not to get wiser. So one of the things I've seen over and over again is that, if we use a popular phrase, winter is always coming. And I mean that literally. Winter is always coming, right? There is 1/4 of the year that is winter. It comes every year. Winter is coming. But also, in terms of good times and bad, winter is always coming for all of us. Winter is always coming for organizations. Rarely is there an organization that's 200 years old that's never had a problem. I mean, I think you all know the statistics about how many organizations go out of business every year. Right? Winter is always coming. In 2020, it's just been an interesting winter so far. We didn't expect it to come. It was a black swan event, but winter is always coming. And I think that as leaders, we have to be psychologically, emotionally, and spiritually ready to deal when winter is coming. I mentioned I love history. If I think about a leader that I found interesting, Winston Churchill was an interesting leader. Now, Winston had a lot of flaws. But if I just look at one aspect of Winston Churchill, and that was how he responded to the bombings in London. So when the Germans were bombing London into submission, what kind of leader was Churchill? And he was a fantastic cheerleader for the country. I mean, you remember his famous quotes, "We will never, never, never surrender." Churchill was a perfect leader in a time of brutal chaos. Churchill was ready. If you ever read the stories about him, right, how he grew up and why he was the way he was, Churchill was ready for an event like this. He was ready mentally. He was ready emotionally. But for us, we also have to be ready spiritually. This is what a good leader is able to do, is understand that winter is coming. And when winter gets here, that we have the ability to be calm, to be steady, to be a good example for everybody around us, and to be able to help our organization, our family, get through the winter. This is the hallmark of what a leader does. Leading in good times, almost anybody can do that. There's nothing magic about leading in good times. A true leader gets measured by how we lead in tough times. And this is a year where a lot of us can look in the mirror and see what kind of leader we are. Now, although I will tell you that winter is always coming, I will also tell you that I am the ultimate optimist. When I look at thousands of years of humanity, when I read the Bible, when I talk to God, I cannot escape the feeling that things are improving slowly, but they are improving. Every generation is better than the generation before. I can't stand when people talk about the young generations and denigrate the young generations. I mean, it is just a fact that every generation stands on the shoulders of the generations before, the mistakes of the generations before. Every generation we have is a better generation than the generation before it. And why older generations think that younger generations are worse than them is beyond me. When it's really the youngest generations they're the key to humanity and the key to getting better. I see such a bright future. When I look at the youngest generations right now and I look at the difference between them and my grandparents, I have such a good feeling about where the world will go. But as much as I think it's critical as leaders that we are always ready for the winter to be coming, I think we also have to understand that we have a brighter future coming. If you look at it analytically, if you just look analytically, you can't ignore the fact that we have lower child mortality rates, right? We have higher standards of living, better health care around the world than we've ever had. So just in human terms, things are better than they've ever been. If you've seen some of the statistics, we have more people now who die from suicide than from war or murder combined in the U.S. Like, let that sink in. We have more people who kill themselves than from war or murder combined. We have more people who die of being overweight than starvation. Like, we are in a great time of gratefulness, is what we should have, and we still struggle. But constantly, the world is improving, and this is why I think it's important for us to acknowledge that, yes, winter is coming, yet we always at the same time are having a brighter future. I trust that with every lesson, with every crisis, with every video that gets shot of somebody who is being abused or somebody who is being killed, I can at least say, thank God we have a video. Because 50 years ago, the same kind of brutality might happen and nobody caught it on camera. It just happened. And at least today, we catch it on video, and the world has to look at it, and we can't look away. And so now that we have video, the world is a little bit better, because now we have to face what we should have faced decades ago. The world is getting to be a better place, even if it doesn't seem like it every day. And I do think it's critical as leaders that we can hold the duality of knowing that winter is coming and the world is getting to be a better place. And it will do that even faster the better leader that you are and the better leader that I am. And so I hope you will really look at this year of 2020 and our chance to have a great reset, a chance to be able to do things differently, a chance to be able to close gaps, a chance to be able to make changes that maybe we weren't ready to make last year. And then we'll be able to, at the end of 2020, look back and say, one of the greatest years ever. Humanity took 10 great steps forward. It was a tough year, but one of the greatest years we've ever had. And it'll get there the better leader that you are.